What if I told you that building a psychometric test is now easily accessible to anybody, right? And the part that used to take weeks or months to do, the item writing, the reviewing, the revising, that process can now be done in under 10 minutes. And every single item is grounded within peer-reviewed evidence, reviewed for bias across different indicators, and validated against actual published instruments. All done automatically with minimum effort on your part. Now, that is kind of like what we built over the past couple of months. We built the world's very first multi-agent psychometric instrument item generator. Now, you can go to GitHub, to this GitHub link, I'll put it in the bio, and you can go download this. You can host it by yourself on your own PC. All that you need to do is add your own API keys for OpenAI, Claude, and Perplexity, and then you can run it by yourself, right? So let me kind of take you quickly through what this is, how it works, and what makes this like totally different, right? So firstly, this is what we call like a multi-agent system. A multi-agent system means that there is not just one chatbot doing all of the tasks for you. We've got 11 or 12 specialized agents each one does a very specific task at a different part within the normal test development kind of like process, right? They all work together. They all work together in order to generate items that are scientifically sound, based in evidence, and that is valid and reliable. So now you might kind of like ask me, it's like, why can't I just ask ChatGPT to like write my server items for me? Man, of course you can, right? But what you're not getting is the evidence in which it's grounded. You don't get structured bias, content, and language reviews. You don't get iterative quality control. You don't get inter-item correlations, and you definitely don't get convergent discriminant validity based on vector-based correlations, right? Based on actual established instruments in the literature, right? So it's not just about asking ChatGPT to create items for you, right? It's a series of orchestrated agents, right, that each have a specialized role that would mirror how we would actually develop a psychometric test if you and I kind of did it by ourselves, right? So we take it through that entire process. We broke down that process into 11 small steps, and each step has a very well-defined agent that does that very specific task. And they all work together to get us a good quality instrument. So how does this work? Right? Let's say, for example, we want to create a new instrument that measures life satisfaction, right? So we indicate that's the item that we want, or the construct that we want to develop. We provide it with a definition, right? So because the agents are going to search the internet, the academic literature based on this, we indicate what is our target population. In this case, it's working adults. We indicate the cultural group, South African, Zulu, Botswana, Dutch, whoever, because basically this part is the agent's going to search what makes these people unique. So we can train, in inverted commas, our language editor, bias reviewer, in order to make sure that the items are actually language specific and culturally specific. You indicate what your response style is. You indicate how many items you want. You indicate which model you want to use. Now, currently, like I've said, we've got 11 different agents. Each one does a specific task. But we also have different agents using different models because it's faster and cheaper. So, for example, here we have the majority of the agents are based on ChatGPT 5.2, right? But we've got the 2 item writers and the reviewer, which is Claude, because that's better at formulation. And we're using Perplexity as the academic search engine, right? So if you put this off, everything will default to Claude, but Claude Opus, which is the best model, but it's a bit expensive. So in the background, we've got a whole bunch of constraints, all the traditional psychometric test stuff. Here, you can just add any additional constraints that you would potentially kind of want to add. Then here's like kind of like the boundary of what it's not. You could potentially, for us, we put in effect balance, right? Because that's not life satisfaction. Maybe here you put in, there's a different cultural language concept. So for example, in more Eastern countries, They don't have a word for grit, right? And there's a differentiation between perseverance and something else, and that something else is called industriousness. So if we were creating a scale for grit, we would potentially put industriousness in there as a potential culturally specific item. Then we provide it with an example item, if we have one, and then we indicate what type of academic sources it should search for. So with all of this stuff in place, our 11 agents are going to work. So let's get generate. So the first thing that kind of like happens is that the agent is going to search the web in two ways. One is going to search for between 50 and 100 academic sources on the specific construct, life satisfaction here. So we can get a good theoretical understanding of what that is. But it's also going to search the internet for like, what does language look like in these people, cultural groups, etc. Then it goes and it retrieves all of that information, right? And it hands all of that over to the item writer. The item writer then generates the items and they hand it over to the first of 3 reviewers, right? We've got a language reviewer, we've got a cultural reviewer, a /bias reviewer, and we've got the critic. The critic then hands it over, gives feedback to the meta editor that consolidates all of the information and provides it back to the critic to say, oh, we've addressed these issues. What do you think? And now that process goes back and forth up until the Metacritic and the critic and the meta editor have agreed that this is now the final best possible version of that item. Then we finalize it, and now the cool thing happens. We do vector-based correlations. So we extract the meaning out of each of these sentences, right, to understand what they are, and then we correlate them, the items between each other, so synthetic correlations, but we also correlate it against known other versions of that instrument. So for example, here, I can almost guarantee it's going to use Wiener's life satisfaction scale for like convergent validity, and for discriminant validity, it will use something else. So now it did the correlations, and now it's doing the comparisons between these known items or these known questionnaires to see if it actually worked to establish synthetic, convergent, and discriminant validity. So now you get your results. It gives you an indication of what you asked. If you want to make any like changes to these items, you can indicate it here and you can run it and it will go start the process over. But here's the 5 items that we've created. So as I've mentioned, it provides you with the rationale of why this item measures this construct, and it's based on these academic sources specifically, right? Now, the reasoning part, we have a scale in the background that evaluates each one of the items, and this is the rating for each one of the final items. If it deviates more than, if it's like under 7, right, it will provide you with a full explanation of why it's such a low rating. Okay, so that's kind of cool, and you can download it when you're done. But what we think is really cool is that we have these vector-based correlations. So here we can see the inter-item correlations, right? We can already estimate the potential McDonald's omega, so the reliability of it. And we can also estimate the mean inter-item correlation. Then what it also does is it goes and it like does vector-based correlations between other instruments that are similar. So in this case, it did take the satisfaction of life scale, and you can see there's a clear overlap. Why? Because these items pretty much measure the same thing. My life matches what I consider to be ideal. The conditions of my life matches my ideal standards. I'm satisfied with how my life matches my ideals. My life matches my personal standards, so on. And that's pretty much the thing. And then also there's like discriminant validity. So look at like something that's not supposed to be it. In this case, you can kind of see it has like 0.5 correlation with eudaimonic well-being. So basically psychological well-being. And it makes sense that it's not that like quality, because life satisfaction is emotional well-being fundamentally. All right, and that's it. And then you can download the information in whatever file you want. And then it provides you with exactly what each item kind of like does, why it's there, what the rationality behind it is, why it's there, what the potential issues are. The bias review tells you exactly the potential issues there for each one. The content reviewer tells you exactly what it found, and so on. And based on this, you can then make potentially amendments to your items, and it will run again and refine your item set. So we think this is one of the first and one of the most amazingest things that AI can bring for us. It's consolidating some of the most difficult things in our field and making it easily accessible to everybody. The description of how to utilize it, how to download it is below. Have fun.